You're an investor, you've got some rental properties you'd like to cash out because right now it's a great time to sell. But if you're wanting to sell those properties and there are tenants still living there, how do you handle that? Honestly, it depends on your tenant. You're an investor, your properties have tenants. Can you sell your property anytime? You sure can. So let's just talk about the legality of selling a property with a tenant in place. Plain and simple, it's allowed. But what you need to know and what the incoming buyer needs to know is that the lease carries over with the property. So for example, if you sell a property in June, but the tenant has a lease that goes through the end of the calendar year, they're staying put. And they're staying put at the current lease terms, including price, move-out date, and any other considerations that are taken care of in the lease. The only ways that that can be broken are, one, if in the lease they originally signed, there's a clause that says if the property is sold, the tenant has to vacate. But that has to be agreed upon before you list. The other option is if both buyer and tenant agree on new terms. If they want to sign a new lease, that's up to them, but not you. So we all know that you can sell a property with a tenant, but should you? As I said earlier, it depends completely on your renter. In my career, I've worked with both sides. Some sides with tenants who were so accommodating and offered to stage the house and clean and let a photographer come in and accommodate showings. Those kind of tenants are a dream, and if that's who's in your rental properties, then get the for sale sign in the yard tomorrow. But there's also the other type of tenant that maybe is really irritated that you're selling or perhaps wants to sabotage the sale because they like living there. I've been through those too, and those are the kind of tenants that sometimes it's better just to wait until they move on. When I'm listing a property that has a tenant in place, I really try to play nice. I find in life you tend to get a lot more with honey than with vinegar. So communication between the agent, the owner, and the tenant is absolutely key. And my approach is always to communicate directly with the tenant. To start off first by introducing myself, let them know what's going on, give them my contact information, and let them know that I am a source for them to make sure they're not being interrupted any more than is necessary, and that the quicker we can work together, the sooner they can get on with their life. And I've found that the better communication I have and the more accommodating I can be, that's usually reciprocated and ends up netting you as the seller a much better price in a much shorter amount of time. When we can all get along and play nice, it works out for everybody in the end. Another thing to consider are showings. When you list a property that has a tenant in the state of Florida, you've got to give that tenant 24 hours notice before someone can show the property. If you've got a tenant who's agreeable and easy to work with, sometimes they ask for less time and they're really accommodating, or they just know that it's 24 hours and they'll always give you a yes. If a tenant does decide to be more stubborn and try to block access, there's other ways that you can work around that. But again, if you've got a tenant who is really upset about you selling, they might try to sabotage those showings. So if you go ahead and list with an ornery tenant, just be prepared that your property might sit a little bit longer on the market, and that could affect the price. Rights. Everybody's got them. You as an owner have every right to sell your property whenever you want. Your tenant has every right to ask for notification and for the terms of their lease to carry on with what they originally agreed to. It's striking a bit of a balance when you're going to sell a house that has a tenant in it. So just make sure you're using clear communication, accommodating whenever possible, and that your agent has all the necessary contact information. Because when everybody can work together, everybody ends up a lot happier at the end of the day. And what makes me happy is helping my customers save on their taxes. Legally, of course. Check out my video all about 1031 exchanges. I promise you'll thank me on tax day. I'm Lindsey Johnson, your resource for all things real estate. See you next time.